Oh, I am going to need all of this today. Hey guys, what's up and welcome to my channel. I'm Miley. I'm one of those people that is really neat, everything is organized, everything has a place, and if it has a labeled place, that's even better. I love labels. My label maker gets used way too much. I'm tearing up at the thought of labels. Now you guys know who I am. And for the most part, my apartment is very organized, except for a few small items that just always seem to be floating around with no home. And truly, it is sad. I want to give them their forever home. But because I live in an apartment, space is a little limited, and the only place I can think of is the wall right by our front door. So I've had this idea in mind for a while now to create a functional accent wall. Usually an accent wall is made with a different color from the rest of the walls that draw your eye to that wall. But I don't really feel like painting, only to have to repaint when I move out of this apartment. So instead of painting, I have the idea to fill the wall with artwork and baskets and shelves and hooks so that it still fills up the wall and creates something interesting to look at, but also creates some functional storage for all of those small items that need to find their home. I have a feeling this project is going to get very involved and take a long time and most likely turn into a two-part video. So let's get to work. So I'm going to take you on my whole design journey and really show you the process of what I did, or I guess lack thereof process, and all the mistakes I made, because you know there was a lot of them. And this project did get more involved than even I was anticipating. I started off by taking some basic measurements so that I could take the sheet with me when I went shopping so that I didn't buy anything that wouldn't fit in the space. And after spending a few hours running out to different stores, I found some really great stuff, and it was all fairly inexpensive, which is even better. And I know none of this makes sense right now, but I'm about to show you how I plan to put it all together. The first thing I found at the store was that black wall shelf, and after measuring it, I knew it would fit perfectly in that space next to the light switch, and with some simple modifications, I also wanted to turn it into a key holder as well. I already had this dry erase calendar and I didn't want to get rid of it because I actually use it a lot, and you know, a functional accent wall has to have a schedule on it, right? All I did was move it up and over to create some more space for the other items. And now, with that calendar being moved over, I had a small sliver of space next to it that I thought I could put some hooks in that area to hang mine and my husband's hats that we wear all the time. And this next item, I was hoping to just find this already pre-made, but I was not so lucky. I couldn't find anything that I thought would fit this space. I was looking for pouches to put mail and other random miscellaneous things in. So in the moment, I decided I was going to make this, and that is what the larger hooks, dowel, and fabric is for, is to make this pouch mail holder. And I am going to stop the design right there. If you want to see what I did above the door and calendar, you'll have to come back for part 2. First thing, let's get to this shelf. Before I hung this shelf up on the wall, I made some simple additions using these hooks. All I did was use some Gorilla Glue to attach each one of these hooks to the shelf, All the hooks have to do is hold some keys, which aren't very heavy, and Gorilla Glue is really strong, so these hooks are definitely not going anywhere. And with this simple addition, it was time to get this shelf up onto the wall. And here's me trying to be all cool and use my phone as a level. Take it from me, just go buy a level. This thing ended up lying to me. It told me it was level with that little green light up thing, and it was not. It was really crooked, and I had to redo the whole thing. And with the shelf all done and hung up, let's move on to those hooks. I'm not going to waste too much time explaining these hooks because it was really simple and really not that interesting. I drilled some holes, screwed some drywall anchors in, and then was able to screw these L-shaped hooks right into the wall. And boom, now I can hang up my hats. With the first two things up on the wall, it was time to tackle the first bigger item of this project, this pouch thing that I wanted to put my mail and other random items in. I also went with pouches because I wanted them to lay flat against the wall. I don't think I've mentioned this, but there is a door that swings right into this wall, so I had to keep a lot of this design as flat against the wall as possible. And after taking some measurements and figuring out the space I had to put this mail holder in, I did a further design to make sure I had everything figured out before I got started. First thing, I measured out where the hooks needed to go and screwed those into the wall, and guess what? It was actually level, no thanks to my phone and its lying little green light. Next, I had to cut this dowel to the correct length, so I measured out where I needed to cut it and used a jigsaw to do it. A jigsaw doesn't usually leave the cleanest finish, at least with cheap wood like this, so I sanded off that edge and went in with a light gray chalk paint to match the fabric I used. Now let's get to the longer part of this piece, actually making and sewing these pouches. Using some basic computer paper, I used that to create the simple rectangle and triangle patterns. And if I was only making one pouch, I probably wouldn't have made a pattern, but because I was making two, I wanted them to be the same, so I made a pattern. If you're new to sewing and want to learn, you trace around the pattern and then make lines around that pattern, and that is your seam allowance. I usually do 1/2 inch of seam allowance, but I later decided to do 1 inch because I forgot I lost my sewing ruler, and the ruler I was using was already 1 inch, so it was easier to just do 1 inch of seam allowance. Once I had all of my pieces cut out, the 3 triangles and rectangle, I took those 2 side triangle pieces and did a double fold. This is where you fold to the line of the pattern and then fold over again. This creates a nice finished edge, and I usually go in and press it down with an iron. This makes it easier to sew. And with the 2 side triangles pinned and pressed out, I began to pin all of the triangles together. And when I cut out the 2 side triangles, I cut them vertically to change up the stripe pattern and make the pouch more interesting. And I wanted the vertical stripes to look like one continuous pattern going across. But now editing the video, I realized I had so many missed opportunities to realize that it looked really funny and that I didn't like it, but we'll get back to that. And now we are at the sewing machine for the first time. For that finished edge at the top, I sewed as close to the edge as possible, and for the rest of the pieces, sewing them together, I just sewed along the pattern line that I drew out. After sewing the 3 triangles together, I cut off all that extra seam allowance because I didn't need that, and it's just extra bulkiness that you don't need. And I separated the 2 sides and pressed it out so that it was nice and flat. And man, I cannot believe at this point that I didn't stop right here and fix that one side to match the other side. So many missed opportunities. With the triangles all ready to go, I attached them to that big rectangle piece, and I put the two wrong sides up, because in sewing, 2 wrongs eventually make 2 rights. Sure, we'll go with that. Back to the sewing machine, I went to sew these guys together, and I was always taught that at every corner you should backstitch to reinforce the corner. So if you're learning how to sew, make sure you do that. Once these 2 pieces were together, I notched out the corner. This just means to cut at a diagonal, and this makes it so that there's not a ton of fabric making the corners bulky. It eliminates that fabric and gives you a nice crisp corner. Crisp corner. That's fun to say. This is the part where 2 wrongs make 2 rights, as we flip the fabric inside, or I guess right side out, and I usually take some scissors or something sharp and jam it into the corners to make those corners nice and crisp, because again, we want some crisp corners, guys. The final step was to do a double turn and press. Double turn and press. Why does that sound like a dance move? I'm going to do the double turn and press. Anyway, you do the double turn and press to get a nice finished edge to finish off this pouch. Like that. And with that edge sewn together, I was able to stick the dowel through and hang it up. And once I hung it up, I hated it. Okay, hate is a strong word. I definitely just had to make a few small adjustments to make it better. The first thing I didn't like was the color of the dowel. I wanted it to be darker to match the darkness of the shelf. The next thing I did was seam rip off one of the sides of each pouch so that I could cut a new piece and make the pieces match instead of trying to do that one continuous pattern, and isn't that so much better? The other thing I didn't like was how flimsy these pouches looked once I actually hung them up. So taking some heat and bond, I ironed that to the back of the pouch and then took a scrap piece of the striped fabric and ironed that to the heat and bond. This makes it so that there's more structure to the pouch and it doesn't look as flimsy. Here's the before and the after. And you know at the beginning of the video where I said, I love labels. I realized I did not have enough labels in this design, so I hand embroidered male into one pouch and misc into the other. I used the outline stitch, and if you haven't seen my video updating denim with embroidery, go watch it. I explain how to do an outline stitch in that video. But go watch it after you're done with this video. With these labels done, these pouches are finally ready to be hung back up. Those matching sides and then the structure from the heat and bond made these pouches so much better. And the darker dowel definitely brings this all together. With everything done now, it was time to grab those small items and put them in their new spots. you liked this video, guys, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification button so that you know when I post, and also make sure to look out for part 2 of this design video. Let's just say I'm going to be trying some new things that I've never done before. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys!